a Philippine vet success story, Attorney Bryan Ramos.
Really amazing. I really like the FIL outfit with the shoes as well. That was fantastic. I mean, it's really nice. But thank you everybody for being here today. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
I think you need to put your microphone.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? Is that better?
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you again for being here, and thank you for allowing me to speak about a very important issue to me, and it's the Filipino veterans' success story. And I quote the term success because it really is a tragedy as to why the Filipino veterans were in this position to be in the first place. Winston Churchill once said, "History will be kind to me, for I intend to write it." Like many of you, I grew up in the United States, or your children, and I grew up as a product of the American educational system. I studied American history, World War II. I learned about Rosie the Riveter, and I watched movies like Saving Private Ryan. I learned about the European theater. I learned about D-Day. I learned about Normandy. I learned about the Blitzkrieg and the Holocaust and the German invasion of Poland. But in my history book, if I remember, there was only about 6 pages dedicated to the Pacific Theater. And most of those pages were dedicated to pictures of General MacArthur landing at the Gulf of Leyte. I learned about the day that would live in infamy when Pearl Harbor was attacked. But there's really nothing about just a few hours later, after the Pearl Harbor attack, the Philippines was also bombed. There were a few paragraphs about the Bataan Death March. And I recall reading the newspaper headline that says, "Thousands of Americans were trapped in Bataan." But there was nothing about the tens of thousands of Filipino soldiers who were fighting with and for the United States. My point is, the Filipino veterans were simply left out of American history. The Filipino Veterans Recognition and Education Project set out to change that in 2 ways. One is the recognition. The Congressional Gold Medal of Honor is the highest civilian honor that the United States can bestow upon anyone. Given that our veterans were in their 80s and 90s and beyond, the first order of business was to recognize the Filipino veterans with the highest honors. Other World War II groups that were recognized already included the Navajo Code Talkers, the Tuskegee Airmen, the Monuments Men, and even the Japanese Nisei soldiers were recognized. In 2014, the coalition began with Major General Tony Taguba, who still claims his FIL-AM or Greater Atlanta membership. Actually, I'm not sure if he's paid his dues recently, but he still claims to be a part of Atlanta, which led to Senator Mazie Hirono introducing Senate Bill 1555 in June of 2015, awarding the Filipino veterans the Congressional Gold Medal. Of the 100 senators, we were able to secure 71 co-sponsors of that bill, and then it went to the House of Representatives. The congressional trackers at that time gave this bill a 2% chance of passing through formal committee. At the 2015 National Empowerment Conference from NAFA, General Taguba addressed the crowd and basically told us that the congressional support for this bill was, I think his term was, dismal. In Georgia, we only had 2 congressional representatives that were supporting the bill at that time in 2015. And then most of us really got to work. And at the very end, and to thanks to many of folks here who did a lot of lobbying in Georgia, we were able to secure 11 commitments of the 14 congressional members of Congress, 9 of which actually co-sponsored that bill. On the House side, we were tasked with getting 435 votes. We wanted 287 co-sponsors, and I'm proud to report that we were able to get 312. The bill passed on November 30th, 2016, and President Barack Obama signed it into law on December 14th, 2016. It was one of his last bills that he was actually able to sign. In 2017, we had the official ceremony in Washington, D.C., where we recognized many of our relatives there, including Florencio Medina, Emilio Trinidad, Luis Perqued, and my grandfather, Calixto Ramos. Now, we are fighting for the veteran story to be told at the time. You saw the video about how we really needed to preserve this American history. The second part that the Filipino Veterans and Filipino Veterans Recognition Education Project was trying to preserve is through the Education Project. You will recall that the Filipinos during World War II were a part of the Commonwealth of the United States. The Filipino veterans were called to service by the United States President Roosevelt with the offer of two things: the offer of citizenship and then the offer of pay for the military service during that wartime period. After achieving the victory in 1946, the United States also passed the Rescission Acts of 1946, which retroactively nullified all of the benefits payable to the Filipino troops and denied them citizenship in total. Of particular interest, the primary sponsor and advocate of the Rescission Acts was Richard B. Russell, who was the senior senator of the great state of Georgia. Of the 66 countries allied with the United States, the Filipino veterans were the only ones that were singled out where the United States did not honor its promises. Over the next 63 years, the Filipino veterans fought for their benefits, and we've slowly chipped away at the Rescission Acts, but that act still remains on the books as an active law. In 1999, George Bush signed into law the naturalization bill that allowed veterans to become citizens if they served in World War II. In 2003, the World War II veterans were allowed to seek VA benefits for health. In 2009, President Obama signed the one-time lump sum payment to the World War II veterans if they were citizens. Now, if they were citizens, right? That's right. So many of our veterans still today are still lost in this quagmire. Their stories are lost. A lot of the documentaries, a lot of the registers are also lost as well, and we're trying to preserve them. And this is done through FIL-VET-REP, the Filipino Veterans Recognition and Education Project. None of the benefits none of the funding for this is through the government at all. It's all through private donations. It's all Filipino-led and driven at this time. The actual medal, the Congressional Gold Medal, is housed at the Smithsonian. But as you can pretty much imagine, it's pretty anemic. We need funds for it. If you look at the other gold medals, the Tuskegee Airmen, the Navajo Code Talkers, they're really robust displays. Ours is not at all. And we'd like to change that. Also, in the next couple of years, you're going to find that there's going to be a lot more documentary films. There's going to be hopefully a few monuments for our World War II veterans, professorships, textbooks, maybe even a more robust website. If we have the web, do we have internet at all here? No? Okay. You'll see that our website's also, it's in the initial phases as well. So we'd like to develop that as well. But what I'm really here to ask you for at this point is to help FIL-VET-REP. We're trying to preserve this history, and we're trying to put it into the permanent spot of American history. If you go to filvetrep.org/donate today, which actually, what we may do, I know that everyone's been sitting here for about an hour. Take out your phones. Go on Facebook now and search for filvetrep.org. Like that page, and you'll see on that page, you'll see a place to donate for these veterans. And I thank you so much for being here. We're going to have another regional ceremony for the next of kin. I know a lot of our veterans have already passed away, but for the next of kin, which is daughter, son, granddaughter, grandson, any of those folks who fill out the application, they're eligible for the Congressional Gold Medal replica. So I encourage all of you to fill out the application and put your ancestor's name on that registry, because to this point, we still don't know who is on the registry. I mean, who actually served. And I pretty much imagine everybody here has a relative that served in World War II. for the Philippines and the United States. Thank you so much for having me.